As exciting as it is that Apple is going to be launching lots of new hardware in just another week, and then the pre-order period comes, and then iOS, macOS, watchOS, all the new versions launch for everybody, then of course that spectacular iPhone launch day where we all head out to the Apple stores, pick up our new models, some of you nearing that time of the year where you sell your current model to help pay for the new one. As exciting as it all is, I'm here to remind you all how disappointing life is, because when new hardware is coming in September, that also means old hardware is going. And in today's video, we're talking about what iPhones and even what Apple Watches will Apple be keeping around, and which iPhones and which Apple Watches will they not be keeping around. Let's begin. So the iPhone lineup, as it currently stands, starts out with the iPhone 7 at the most affordable place. For those of you who may not know, yes, Apple still sells the iPhone 7 to this day in 2019. Right up from that, we have the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus, of course, and then that brings you to the 2018 lineup. There are three: XS Max, XS, and XR. Now, you won't see the 2017 iPhone 10 in this lineup, probably because it had so many similarities to the XS, and simultaneously, instead of lowering the price of the iPhone 10, Apple just discontinued it. They don't sell it anymore. Now, that does not make it obsolete for the people confused out there. It still gets software updates, and it is still available from third parties in plenty of places. You'll be able to find cheaper iPhone 10s over on Amazon or eBay or Swappa or wherever you want to buy phones. It's still out there for a discount. It's just not available brand new from Apple, unless you count the certified refurbished section. Now, there are only a few times in Apple's history that they've decided to discontinue a phone they launch only 1 year after it's been around, and that's usually when they have a specific model that year that's intentionally trying to compromise and be more affordable. You see, in previous years, Apple's okay with selling the iPhone 6 and 6S at the same time, even though physically these phones have a lot of similarities. Under the hood, the iPhone 6S is the better buy, but Apple had no problem keeping around a cheaper iPhone that looked very similar to their flagship one, because that falls into their more compromised budget department. That means the iPhone 6 doesn't have all the new flagship features, but it is at a more affordable price point for those who didn't want to pay for the 6S. There have been similar times, though, with the iPhone 10 being discontinued just a year after its launch, and that was back with the iPhone 5, which was out for a year, and then after that year was up, they took it away. Why? Because the following year, they launched the iPhone 5S and the iPhone 5C. The 5C, being a more budget-friendly, cheaper model, was filling that place of that once dated flagship category that Apple usually has for their devices. So basically what I'm trying to say is when Apple makes a more affordable device that's separate from the flagships, that's usually when they discontinue their flagships only after 1 year. So now things are going to get a little bit tricky, because as you know, the 5C didn't really get a successor. After the 5S and 5C launched, they went straight into the 6 and then the 6S. They didn't make a 6C or anything like that. But now that the 10R is the more budget-friendly, affordable option for more people out there not interested in paying top dollar for those flagships, actually sold very, very well, unlike the iPhone 5C. So now that the 10R and the 10S and 10S Max have been out for a year, the question still remains, do you discontinue the 10R because probably launching the 11R, or what I think they're going to call it, the 2019 iPhone, is going to cannibalize the 11R's sales too much to keep around the 10R, so it makes sense to just discontinue it after a year, right? Otherwise, most people are just going to see that the 11R is more expensive and only just has an extra camera and a little bit better battery life, maybe a better CPU, but from the front, everything looks the same and all the changes are fairly incremental for people. So, for all of you out there hoping that, well, Apple will keep the 10R and just lower it by $100, making it $650, then it's more affordable for more people. But personally, I think that in today's smartphone world, where sales are tanking so heavily and the smartphone market in general is in decline, it's going to make most sense for Apple to discontinue all three of the 2018 models just a year after they launched. I know, it kind of sounds crazy. That means the 10S and the 10S Max, even though they were launched just last year, they have too many similarities with this year's iPhone Pro. From the front, they're going to look very similar, and Apple's probably thinking that if they keep the 10S and 10S Max around for, say, $100 cheaper, so 10S starts at $900, 10S Max starts at $1,000, there's going to be way too many people that just want to buy those cheaper models, because who cares about the triple camera or bilateral wireless charging or Face ID 2? No one cares about any of those things, so it makes most sense if the 10S and 10S Max just kind of disappear off of Apple's website and the two different iPhone Pros always fill in their space at the same price points so that when people go to Apple stores and they want the best of the best, it's not competing with last year's model anymore. Makes the most sense for the 2019 iPhones to sell well and for Apple to retain the price points that they already have across the lineup. So people go back and forth on this. Obviously, we're not going to know for sure until next week, but my guess is that it's going to cost them way too much in regards to sales to keep around the 2018 lineup. So I think all three of those models are going away. But just remember, they're still getting software updates. They're not obsolete. They're still going to last you probably 5 to 6 years. They're just not going to sell them directly from Apple. In regards to swap up Amazon and eBay, yeah, you're still going to be able to find the XS and XS Max probably for $100 cheaper than they are right now in brand new condition. In regards to some of the lower end iPhones, yes, it's probably true that the iPhone 7 is finally going to be taken off of Apple's site. It was a beloved phone by a lot of people, and as soon as I brought this up online, people got very upset because the iPhone 7 was a monumental upgrade for iPhone, and some of you still have the iPhone 7, and knowing that it was still on the Apple Store makes you feel like it was still current and flagship in some way. Taking it off makes it feel old and dated, but in the grand scheme of usually how long Apple keeps selling their iPhones on the store, usually they stop selling them after about this amount of time, so it makes sense that in a couple weeks, iPhone 7 will no longer be available directly from Apple. And while that may seem sad for some of you who like the iPhone 7, keep in mind there's some good news involved with that as well. That most likely means the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus will be getting a price reduction. Of course, very, very similar to the iPhone 7. Most would agree it should have been called the iPhone 7S. You still got the A11 chip, wireless charging, 4K at 60 support, old-fashioned home buttons, redesigned Taptic engines, and an overall classic design that a lot of people are fine with who don't care about OLED or Face ID or curved corners. They just want a phone that works. These very, very good phones are going to get cheaper. Right now, the iPhone 8 starts at $600 brand new, and the iPhone 8 Plus starts at $700 brand new, which, given the dated design and dated features, makes sense that those would go down, especially on the first-party site. Obviously, if you go used or refurbished, you can find these for much cheaper, but knowing that Apple themselves is probably going to reduce the price of these by $100, that means you'll be able to expect the regular iPhone 8 for only $500, and the iPhone 8 Plus with its portrait mode, dual camera, super fast Touch ID, 1080p display for all of you 10R whiners who demand to have 1920 by 1080 on your smartphone, then this will be only $599 for those of you who want that 1080p display. And still, the A11 Bionic chip is much faster than many other Android smartphones on the market. And also a really good battery life on the 8 Plus as well. Still a really good phone, just not quite up to date with today's modern display trends. So that's the good news you have to look forward to. As a whole, I think it's going to be very bizarre because for the longest time we've had quite a diverse iPhone lineup, having phones from all different screen sizes, and Apple selling phones all the way down from $350 all the way up to $1,000. But I think in 2019, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to have a very minimal basic lineup. It's literally just going to be the 2019 iPhones, the three of them that we've been talking about, and then iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. That's it. Only 5 models in total. That's from old models to newest possible models. My predictions in today's video might not be entirely correct. Some people, with no evidence or no track record to prove it, are just suggesting that maybe Apple will keep selling the iPhone 7 for some reason. Not sure why, other than just maybe it's cheap to make and people are still buying it. Or maybe they can't afford to lower the price of the iPhone 8, so they gotta keep it price locked where it is right now, so they'll just keep selling the 7 and the 8 together. Even some people going as far to say in 2019 they're gonna bring back and revive the 2017 iPhone 10. Not sure why they would bring it back at this point in the game, but a lot of you are saying that there's enough differences between the 2017 iPhone 10 and what will be this year's 5.8-inch iPhone Pro that they can afford to have both of them, maybe letting the iPhone 10 be around $850 or more, and then the iPhone Pro still starting at $1,000. I doubt they'll do that. I think that would be too confusing for consumers, but that's what I'm predicting will happen. The thing I'm most unsure about is whether or not Apple will keep the iPhone 10R. A lot of people think they will and just sell it at a lower price point because of how popular it is, and trying to fill it in with a new phone that just has a dual camera and slightly better internals and improved Face ID just will confuse people. But I think as long as the 11R or the 2019 iPhone keeps it at that $750 price point, they'll be fine and people will be generally happy with the upgrade. And last but not least, Apple Watches. Is Apple keeping the Series 4 even with the launch of the Series 5? Based on how Apple has handled Apple Watch launches launches in the past? Probably not. There's very good evidence that Apple will just stop selling the Series 4, keep selling the Series 3 at that more affordable price point, and the Series 5, given aesthetically, is likely going to be very, very similar to the Series 4, just with some new finishes. The Series 5 will fill in the place of the Series 4, likely at the same price point, and then Apple will just keep selling the Series 3 for those people who want Apple Watches but can't afford the flagship watch of the time. I know that kind of bums people out, and a lot of you would much rather Apple discontinue the Series 3 and then keep selling the 4 at a more affordable price point, but given it's pretty evident that there's going to be a Series 5 next week, and we know that physically it's going to be very, very similar to the Series 4, it makes the most amount of sense that they'll stop selling the 4, keep the 3 at that more affordable price point, because they did something very similar when the Series 3 originally came out. Back when the 3 came out, they kept selling the Series 1 for people on a budget, but they stopped selling the Series 2 because it had so many similarities with the Series 3. They just kicked it out of there because they didn't want the two competing with each other. Let the Series 3 be the flagship device and the Series 1 be the more affordable option. Probably going to be a repeat situation of that. But of course, I could be wrong. But given how Apple has handled things in the past, that's what I think is most likely going to happen next week. What do you guys think is going to happen? What products are getting discontinued and which ones are going to be sticking around, and how big is their price cut really going to be? All that good stuff. Let me know what you're thinking over on Twitter or join our Discord. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you guys in the next one.